Hello, I'm delighted to be here with you and have the opportunity to spend some time with you. And thank you to Danny and the Citra folks for inviting me. As the introduction said, my name is John Bruce. I'm the CEO of a company called Inrupt, and I founded it with Sir Tim Berners-Lee. Of course, you'll know him as the inventor of the World Wide Web, and I've got just 15 minutes to try and cover 3 fast things for you. 1, why do organizations have a real problem with innovation? 2, what's this, as I believe it, the single biggest opportunity we have before us in turning pipelines into platforms? And 3, what can we do starting today to make it a reality? So let's talk about the first thing. Why do companies really struggle to innovate? And by innovate, I don't mean come up with great ideas. I mean get them adopted. Because innovation without adoption is just pipe dreams, right? It's a waste of time. It's a waste of time and opportunity. But I'm really fortunate to have a partner as brilliant as Tim. And he has a great line when he talks about what it was like to invent the web and watch it take off. Back then, he says, it used to be really difficult to explain to people what the World Wide Web could be like. And now he says, it's really difficult to explain why it was so difficult. Because it's so obvious now, but it was really difficult back then. And it's a perfect example of the challenge I think we all face in embracing and adapting to major innovations. And especially the kind you're all here to talk about today. And that's because some of the most significant shifts in economies and ecosystems are examples of non-linear innovation. So linear innovations help us do things faster, cheaper, better, half the size, twice the speed, half the price. I mean, you can actually plot the progress over time. And we put names to some of them, like Moore's Law for semiconductors or Metcalfe's for networks. Non-linear innovation, on the other hand, like the web, don't just help us do things faster, cheaper, or better. They unlock a whole new world of the previously impossible, just like Tim did. And unlike linear innovations, you can't plot them. They're much more unpredictable. Now, those of us who are old enough to remember the web when it took off, you knew at the time something big was happening. You didn't quite get it, you couldn't imagine where it was all headed, but you knew it was going to be significant. And given the way we generally look at innovation, that's a problem. You know, before partnering with Tim, my career has been in making markets for previously unknown products and services. And as a consequence of which, I got to see how organizations struggle and mostly fail at innovation all the time. And it's for no fault of their own. They're victim of the way organizations go about evaluating new opportunities. They actually spend way too much time trying to predict the future. Here's what I mean. Organizations attempt to forecast future demand and design products aligned with that vision. For every product idea they have, organizations generally turn to complex profit and loss projections, total available market, all the stuff that the companies do when they try and predict what's going to happen as a consequence of the product they build. And they do that before they actually decide if they're going to build it, because guess what? This is how they generally run their businesses. Why not study the most critical success factors of existing products and emulate those, right? Make them the foundation of a new line of business. And it's logical, and it can work for linear innovation. but it cripples nonlinear innovation. And I call it a phenomenon of reverse causality. When a business looks back over the history of a successful product and tries to tell itself a neat and tidy story about why it was a success, and then they expect it to play out a similar script that'll ensure its new product or business line will succeed. But my contention is the reality behind past successes are way more complex than anybody really recollects. Often businesses don't really understand exactly what determined the success of past products. They just think that they do. And then when they try and repeat past successes, they falsely associate this effect with a cause. That's reverse causality. And it's really hard to avoid because it plays into a fundamental human strength. We're remarkably good at finding patterns in events and deriving a general explanation for them. It's cognitive. Actually, it's evolutionary. It's a basic survival instinct. But it gets misused all the time. And to see how it works, take the most famous example of all time. This guy, Michael. He was born 5 centuries ago to a family that had been Jewish, and at the time of the Inquisition, they converted to Catholicism. And they changed their name to Our Lady, Nostra Dame. And we know him generally by his Latinized name of Nostradamus. Really talented individual. Wrote a famous book called The Prophecies, which foretold the future. And boy, for 500 years of his fans been doing a pretty good job to try and prove him right over and over again. They pour through the book after every world calamity and claim that he predicted it. The fire of London, French Revolution, Napoleon, Adolf Hitler, assassination of JFK, 9/11, even COVID. Well, the good news is he predicted the end of the world in 3797. So at least we've got that going for us. But of course, what's happening is what Nostradamus wrote was poetically vague. He wrote 4-line verses, quatrains, and he wrote them in French, Greek, and Latin. And they were intentionally difficult to keep him out of harm's way with the Catholic Church, because they were frowning on soothsayers as heretics. Actually, he was a pretty big hit at the time, ended up rich, and you know, I guess if you can foretell the future, that's not too difficult to do. But ever since, people have been going back and trying to retrofit these intentionally vague quatrains to what's happening in the real world. And, you know, with apologies to Nostradamus fans, if any of you are, then, you know, the folly of this is pretty straightforward to understand, right? It's pretty obvious. But actually, technology adoption can be similarly vague. Every success or failure is influenced by 1,000 decisions, actually 1,000,000 factors all at work. So is it any wonder when we try and decipher useful signals from all that overwhelming noise, we sometimes end up acting like those Nostradamus fans? We look for patterns that may not actually exist. We impose our patterns onto events. And worse yet, we believe now we can predict them in the future. We look for those pattern matches. Now we think we've got a playbook. And when we look at potential new products or services, we put them against the playbook. And it doesn't work that way. If it doesn't fit, we cast them away. So why can't companies really innovate in a nonlinear way? Because of this reverse causality. And we'll talk in a little bit more about some methods to overcome that, but But first, it begs the question, well, who cares, right? Why change? Why bother? Well, we're all here today because we're bothered, because we want to change, because of the work that we think the potential there is in digital ecosystems, digital economies, and obviously innovation always matters. It's always important to our businesses, our societies, and the stakes are going up fast. They're accelerating. And you know this as well as I do. You'll live in it. The digital world is at a real tipping point. Everybody's fed up with the surveillance capitalism and big data and everything else that goes with it. And actually, people rate their online experience now worse than they ever have. And outside the select few, most businesses are disadvantaged too. We're sort of kind of trapped in this race we can't win. More data, more data, more data. Maybe we can get more data, and I hope we can figure out how to monetize it some way, somehow, sometime. And there's always a latest hope, right? Blockchain, remember blockchain? Then the metaverse, and now we've got AI. So how did we get in this point? Well, I think it all started with Tim, actually. I'm not blaming him, but he kicked off probably the most powerful economic force in the last 100 years when he invented the web. I think possibly the most potent creation of the last 100 years, as I say. But along with it comes some of our biggest challenges. So let's just reflect on that a little. So Tim invents the web, and for the first 10 years it was pretty straightforward. It was fantastic, but it was pretty straightforward. Anybody could put their own stuff on the web. You publish your own put your own website out there, and then let everybody come and browse it. I lived through this as a marketing. I ran marketing for a technology company, and we basically put our product material on the web. We thought it was the best thing we'd ever done. But it was a totally broadcast medium. Fast forward 10 years, now we get Web 2.0, right? We got a read-write web, where it becomes more interactive, and then we can allow people to post their content, to upload their own stuff easily. And some companies got really, really, really good at taking advantage of that. And now, fast forward to where we are, we got audiences and buyers who have flocked to these websites, one of the key pivotal moments in the evolution of the web. And basically, a few massive corporations have found a way to dominate the demand side of the web. And the problem for the rest of us is that they use them as points of leverage. Of course they do. We all know about walled gardens and the like, and we know what comes with it. The economic benefits were huge for them, and we all believed we should follow suit. Corporations the world over use the same tightly coupled, meshed technology of identity, data, and permissions, all tightly coupled together, to collect as much data as we could, offer them an app, get their data, build a silo, the bigger the better, right? And we all know we've been at the point of diminishing returns now for quite a while. I talk to lots of organizations around the world, and we're all faced with the same problem: increasing cost, complexity, regulations. Time to fix it. So obviously some of the fixes come from you. International data spaces, GaiaX, My Data, and so on. Phenomenal initiatives, and I apologize for those I didn't mention. And then there's regulations coming along with it, right? Led by the EU, actually. I mean, again, I travel the world, and the EU regs are leading the charge in all of that. But there's a huge technology change on the way too, invented again by Tim, with the help of a lot of open source contributors, and it's called Solid. It's a connected set of technologies that are already woven into the fabric of the web, just like HTTP and HTML. Think of it as the third layer of the web. Actually, Tim does. He calls it Web 3.0. Basically, it takes the technologies that have been meshed together and breaks them apart. So now identity, data, and apps are separate in a way that any organization or any developer can take advantage of them. Now we can organize data in a totally different way. It lets us store data in a way that's centered around people, not around the applications. And we call that a pod, a personal online data. Think of it like a a general purpose data wallet. And you can store any data you like in these pods, no matter where it comes from. Apps can request access to read and write data into the pod, and so multiple apps can access the same set of data. And it also has an inbuilt consent model too. So organizations can ask for access to it and be granted access to that data in order to give those individuals better products or services. Most consumers think this is great, I can't wait. But in your role, it's important to think about how you can take technologies like this and bring it into your organization. And you're probably thinking, I already have a data model, I already use data in particular ways, so what does it mean for me? How come, what does it mean for my business? And they're all great questions. You should feel that interest, you should feel a measure of discomfort, and you should feel a sense of concern, because they're the early signs of non-linear invention, non-linear opportunity. It's the part of the process, actually, where most businesses fall away. They chicken out. They don't know how to process it. You get past that, then start to look for opportunities inside your business. And you think, okay, when would we last do something like this? How can we turn this into a business case that makes sense? And there you have it, reverse causality, Nostradamus. You've fallen into the trap. So what do you do to avoid it? Well, there are two frameworks I like to offer you. First one is better understand the change you need to go through. You need to go from in my opinion, from a pipeline to a platform business. In the next decade on the web, in order to thrive, pipeline businesses are going to have to change. And most businesses are pipeline. They produce stuff, they find customers, and they supply them. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. But the biggest businesses today on the web are platforms. Platform businesses don't just ship product, they act as an intermediator between supply side and demand. They figure out what their customers want and they find ways to supply it. And good platforms start with a principal sponsor who brings it all together. They raise the question. It begs the question, how do you earn the right to be that sponsor? Well, in the first instance, you've got half the code cracked. You know the demand side. You know your customers. Now it's all about figuring out what they truly want. Job one, open up the dialogue with them. Use a technology that allows you to do that. If you can just achieve that, you'll have moved your business to a way better place. Your whole organization will be in a way better place. Actually, Solid does that for you. Okay, so once you've done that, now you can figure out the supply side. Better yet, you can invert it from supply and demand to demand and supply. So what can you do starting now? In the interest of time, let me leave you with some thoughts. First, stop trying to figure out what the future looks like. Move to a technology that has immense opportunity and do it in a way where it's empirical. You adopt the technology, you assess how much progress you've made, and you iterate. If you do that rather than try and figure out the end state, you will do way better. Way better. And I'm not saying give up on linear innovation. You know how to do that. I'm talking about game-changing, societal-changing tech. Then there's an easy way to determine, okay, should I undertake it? First one is, can it be done? Is the technology feasible, or do we have to change the laws of physics to do it? Well, in my analog, it's putting a man on the moon difficult. It's not moving at the speed of light difficult. Then you've got to figure out, can I assemble the right resources to do it? Can I bring them all together in a way that's ethical and legal? Am I breaking any laws doing it? Then you should go and look for guidance from people who are not invested. People who have an opinion, but they're not invested in the project or close to the project, so they can give you an unbiased view of whether or not it should be done. And lastly, figure out, is it really valuable? Don't figure out your role in it necessarily. Figure out if it's valuable, because if you're a smart business, you'll figure out your role in that value. Put aside P&Ls. They will stop you doing a lot of... I don't know what the web would have looked like on a P&L basis, by the way. Do you? I mean, it's impossible to assess. So experiential planning, experiential assessment, and then execute. Actually, Apple built the iPhone on this basis, and they didn't do too badly with that, right? Just as a small aside, don't bank on sales. If you bank on sales, you'll fail. Build the underpinnings of success, and you'll get sales if that's what you're after. So nonlinear innovation, you can't know where you're going. You just know where you start. It comes with a new set of challenges, and it's contrary to what most organizations do because they rely on the tried and tested things that have got them to this point. The safe way, and that's not the way that changes the world. That's not the way that changes businesses. And that's your job. That's what you've got to do. Not to predict the future, but to enable it. Because if we'd have relied on tried and tested, we wouldn't have the web today. Just think about that. And if it feels uncomfortable, if it feels like it's go to the moon uncomfortable, you're in an okay place, because that's what it's supposed to feel like. Thank you.